Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Get Real with Jack and Cindy. I'm Cindy Morrison.
I'm Jack Wallace. How's everybody doing?
Doing great.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, beautiful day today.
At my open house was packed.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, it was like, it's hard to believe that it's February.
It's February and I'm wearing sandals.
But it's spring in a way, and we're talking about
getting your house in order.
Yeah.
So this is going to be a little bit different of getting your house in order. This is our first one is getting your house in order of a two-part is going to be for buyers.
Yeah.
What do you need to do to get your own house, your mind, your finances, everything else ready to buy a house, whether it's your first, whether it's your 10th, whether it's an investment property? What do you need to do?
Right. And really, when we say that, it's the idea of life as a house, like your life is your house, and getting it in order and being ready to actually go and figure out whether, first of all, it's time to buy a house. And then second of all, what you do to go about actually getting the house.
And so we're going to go through the 10 things we think are super important for you. We're going to start out with the one that nobody wants to talk about, budgeting and finances. So this means looking at your debt to income ratio, your DTI, which Jack is going to break that down for you in a minute, a little better than I do. But I go every year and I teach for South Plains Workforce, Texas. I do a 4-day seminar on your finances, how to find and get a job, keep a job, that kind of thing.
So cool.
Yeah, but the first day
they're doing that in school now, which I'm so
love
glad.
that.
Yeah, it's so good.
Wish I'd had that in school. But yeah, I go in and specifically talk about finances, and this doesn't have to be something scary or complicated. But if you begin to sit down and look at, okay, how many times do I go to Starbucks, and how many times do I really need to go to Starbucks? What am I spending?
Why does Starbucks always get picked on?
I don't know. I love me some Starbucks.
I just think it's funny how it's like every time anybody wants to say like what you shouldn't spend money on is Starbucks, but then there's always a line at Starbucks. I mean, never Chick-fil-A or
yeah, exactly right.
Anyway, sorry.
So but look at what is your rent costing you? What does it cost for you to eat? Do you cook at home? Do you go out? Can you adjust some of those things that maybe you can save, or also, just as important, pay off that credit card debt?
Yeah, I think that's the credit card debt is huge. And there's a couple of great, Dave Ramsey or
Dave is my favorite.
I like Dave. The only problem with Dave Ramsey is it's difficult to build credit under his thing.
Interesting.
So it's like some people that follow it so stringently, then when they go to do something, they have a hard time because they haven't established credit. So I'd say that's the only kind of, I think it's hard to go against the principle of it for sure. But then there's also The Psychology of Money, which is a book. This is a great book, Psychology of Money.
So I had this in my bag because I actually took it with me on vacation. Lee Cohen actually suggested to both of us to read this. And it really is a good, very understandable book that lets you understand why we spend money on certain things, how to adjust your thinking when it comes to money. Just a really great book.
And I read a lot of books on finance. I do. And I think it's really an important thing. It's good. It's like, I mean, you do what you want, but it's like, I think it's an important thing to kind of to learn new things about investing and all that. But that is such a good basic, and just why we do what we do. And, the difference between riches and wealth. Riches are the stuff that we, our showy stuff, our bracelets, our necklace, our belts, our shoes, like that. You could buy one at Target or you can buy one at Hermes. But then you have like your house, that's, your stocks, your bonds, the things that are wealth that are, you said generational wealth, that are going to be more sustaining things. So it's just a really good book. But, the one thing I would say that's a really great thing, if you're really starting out and you're thinking about buying a house and you say you're thinking kind of a 6 months to a year, what I think is really smart. So if you're paying $1,000 in rent, let's say, and your house payment is going to be like $2,500, then take the $1,500 and put it in an account and pay it every month like you're paying it. See if that's a struggle. See if it's easy. If it's easy, then you can probably do that without much effort. The other cool thing about that is that $1,500 times 12 or however many goes towards your down payment. So it's a really good way to start building your down payment that you're going to put more down on the house.
I love that
It's a
idea.
great way to budget and see if that's going to work for you because, like people tell you you can afford something, but
Can you really?
there were a lot of
Can you
credit
really?
cards through the years who told me and mine that we could afford a whole lot more than we could afford.
Mhm.
And then, it all of a sudden you're like over your head. So that's a really great way.
I love that.
Yeah, but the first thing too is you have to get control of your credit cards. You do.
Yeah. And one of the great ways to do that, because it can seem overwhelming. If you have, 3 or 4 cards, where do you even start? Start with that high interest rate credit card first. Put as much money as you can toward that and make the minimum on the rest of them. Once you get that paid off, go to the next one. And this sort of ties into what is number 2 for people who want to buy a
And
home.
you also on that same thing, if
Mhm.
you like this, if you like short-term rewards quicker, you can pay the smaller ones off.
Oh,
The
yeah.
smaller balance, pay that off, and then put the card to the side. Don't cancel it. Don't cancel it, but put it to the side, and then you keep going up. And even if you have a higher interest rate one, a lot of people like clicking off. They feel more progress.
Mhm.
So like $300, and you can do that in a couple of months. Then that's gone, and you feel like I got one off.
Nice.
Yeah.
And you mentioned don't cancel it. From when I was an investigative reporter and consumer reporter, it's better to just take that credit card and either cut it up or put it in water in your freezer where it's a big frozen block of ice. You have to wait for the ice
Mhm.
to melt to actually use the card. Because if you cancel it, that can affect your credit in a bad way.
And the reason affects your credit in a bad way is it doesn't seem to make sense, but here's why it makes sense. Because when they're looking at your debt to income and they're looking at your debt ratio and what you have available credit.
Mhm.
So your available credit is, let's say you have $20,000 in total available credit and your balance is 10,000. If you then paid off 5,000 of that and then it's your 15,000 and you stayed at 10, suddenly you're actually higher in that ratio than you were before. So it doesn't seem to make sense. It seems like, well, wow, you should say, wow, people got rid of a credit card. But the reason why is because they're looking at how much of your credit you're using.
Yes.
And so if you start taking away your available credit, then it's actually making the amount of credit you're using go up. So that's why it affects your credit negatively. I like those things to be explained to me
Yes.
because then I understand, oh, okay, that's why we do it that way. So,
Yes.
yeah.
So having your budget and knowing whether you are ready yet to buy a home kind of goes into number 2, and that is getting pre-approved for a loan, which means you're going to pick out a lender and they're going to tell you if you are approved for a home and how much. Also, if your financiers are not such that you can buy a house now, a lot of times they will be able to tell you how to repair your credit
Mhm.
and be able to buy in the future in X so many months.
And a pre-approval is just that. It's the pre-approval. It's not the approval. You get an approval once you found the house, put an offer in, and you go through that whole process. So the pre is just a basic. They take some basic information from you. And they say, okay, with some backup documents. Some banks that I go through actually do a little bit more, and I like that because the seller has more of an idea of what their actually credit worthiness. But it's a pretty easy process. It's not like the really in depth stuff. You have to you need to have some your taxes record of your taxes. There'll be a whole list that we can provide for you of things you're going to need,
Mhm.
and we'll have lenders on too. But I won't show a house, and even with listings, a lot of times I ask if they're pre-approved and to
Yeah.
see it because it's like, the seller is leaving their house and taking all their dogs, and it's a big deal for them to do it every time. If that person is not somebody who could even afford the house, that's really not fair to the seller. So it's
I
a
won't even show.
it's a
If I have a
courtesy
buyer,
thing
yeah.
even.
If
Yeah.
if I have a buyer, if they're not pre-approved,
Mhm.
I really don't know how much they. I
Mhm.
mean, if we're looking at $1 million homes and they can only afford a $200,000 home, then
Right.
we're wasting everybody's
And
time.
I feel like if somebody is on that borderline and they want to, they can go to the open house. I mean, that's fine.
Mhm.
But it's like to get the seller to make the leave and do all, and then in some the higher end houses, then the sellers are very strict about who they want in their house, and they really want to make sure you have a really firm pre-approval. So
And a local lender, I think, is important. I've
it
had
really
deals
helps.
deals
Yeah.
bust because it was 1-800 or .com get a loan, and they really weren't approved for
Mhm.
that, and there wasn't a local person I could speak to, and the whole deal busts because they really can't get that
And
loan.
it doesn't mean that you can't go through a larger bank that has a local person here. It's just we want that local contact that you can, really get with and say what's happening.
And you can, if there are banks that lend you money, mortgage companies, credit unions, there are a lot of different ways to go that you can figure out sort of what works best for you, where you can get the lowest interest rate.
I'm also seeing even some personal lending from family members and things because, the interest rates have gotten high enough now that some family members are getting they're doing it and then charging less money, less interest than an institution, but they do a true mortgage. So yeah,
Interesting.
so there's ways, that it kind of benefits both parties because the person gets a really nice, 30-year interest rate for that, and eventually they'll probably get a refi and roll it in, and then the other person gets maybe a little bit of a reduced, and not so strict on qualification. So
I've seen a lot
it's
more
another
owner
good thought.
financing
Yeah,
available these
yeah.
days too. So, all right. So number 3 on our list is going through your wish list and wants list. And we actually have one of those. If you want to message us, happy to send it. But you really need to dig deep. And if it's just you or you and significant other family, I mean, as a family, talk about that because some things that are a hard pass for one may be a must have for the other.
Mm.
And also, some of those fancy things you want are really kind of a want. I mean, you really need an oven, but do you really need a Bosch oven?
Well, I think it's even like with talking about credit cards, your wish compared to your must. Like
Mhm.
you must have food,
Mhm.
but you may wish to have caviar. So like,
Yeah.
I mean, like there's all those you may really need to have a belt, but do you need an Hermes belt? That's I mean, and I think it's the same thing with houses. Like you really get to the place where and sometimes it's good to start. I would say, start with your big list. I mean,
Mhm.
start big and imagine what you would like, and then start going, okay, but now what can we live with? What would be really not that big of a deal
Mhm.
to us? I mean, and because every wish is, you have to make a payment on that wish,
Yeah.
so so like, what am I willing to pay for and what am I not? I mean, there's things that'd be nice to have, but, you know, I don't know. It's like the movie The Jerk where he, gets rich and then he says, remember when I always said I wanted to disco in the basement? I mean, like, so I think you really have to look at that and go, do I really need a disco in the basement? And maybe you do. I mean, but
Maybe,
and if you
maybe.
have the money to do that and that's what you want, that's great. But yeah, that's a big one.
Yeah, and I also this kind of ties back to the lender and the pre-approval. Just because you've been pre-approved to buy a house for $500,000 doesn't mean you have to buy a house for five hundred
Mhm.
thousand dollars. You want to look. You want to make sure that you can eat. Feed
Don't want to
your
be house
family.
poor. Yeah.
Yeah. So keep that in mind on your wish list too. Even though you're pre-approved for something, do you really need all the things that go with
Hmm.
that amount of money? Next, research neighborhoods.
Mm.
And I think this comes a lot with the livability. Do you like to walk to restaurants for dinner? Do you not mind driving? Do you like to go to Costco once a week as opposed to going to the grocery store, every day? Are there certain school districts you're interested in? I
And
think all of
and what
those
are the
things.
life changes that are driving you to a different place? Are you
Yes.
getting married? Are you having
Mhm.
kids? Are the kids going to college? Are you wanting to get closer to, restaurants and things that you can walk to when in the evening? There's all those things that are really, really important. But, kind of back to the $1,500 additional whatever on your payment.
Mhm.
I think go live go live in the neighborhood for a couple of weeks. I mean, if you live close enough, go grocery shop there, go to the coffee shops there, go to church there, whatever you want to do that's over in that area that you're
Mhm.
thinking about for a couple of weeks or more, and say, yeah, I really do like it here, or man, I really hate the traffic here.
I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, because I mean, a lot of times people have no idea what the traffic. Oh, this is a really big one. Drive there at 5 o'clock in the evening, drive there at
Ooh.
10 o'clock in the morning, look at it all different times, and because you don't know, it changes. Rush hour, after school's out, I mean, like, all of those things are really important.
And I think when you're talking about, I love that. And I think when you're talking about neighborhoods too, looking at the schools, even if you don't have children, but Todd and I did that when we bought our home in Tulsa. We looked at school districts because we knew at some point we wanted to have children,
Or resell.
yeah,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
resale, yeah. So, just all of those things go together to really make that, I think, perfect home bubble for
Mhm.
you.
Sure. Absolutely.
And for those of you who don't know, here in Tulsa, we have like Midtown Tulsa, we have South Tulsa. Midtowners, I mean, they kind of go in their little 3 to 4 mile radius, and if they drive to South Tulsa, they feel like they're driving to Dallas.
I went to James High School. I went all the way. So I'm both. I'm both.
You are both. You're a Midtowner now, but South, we just kind of drive everywhere. We just know we're going to go downtown.
I think the whole city though has become. I mean, it's kind of it's changed so much. I
Mhm.
mean, I think everyone's getting used to driving, and then you're getting used to traffic. I mean, it is amazing how much different traffic is. It is.
Oh yeah.
It's like everybody wants to grow and be a big city, and then all of a sudden you're going, I live in a big city. I don't know if I signed up for this. I mean, we're still not a big city, but
More than 1 million now,
yeah.
which does actually change a lot of things with the city,
And they say
especially
when
traffic.
like once you do that, how quickly it doubles. I mean, so you can feel
Oh yeah.
we've got a lot going on. So yeah, so it's exciting,
Hmm.
but again, you have to think about that. So there's like I went out last night to downtown. Or went downtown to eat dinner, and it was I mean finding a parking place downtown was incredibly hard. And I remember 5, 6 years ago, you could throw a rock downtown and not hit anybody. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just amazing how much different that is. So
So I love kind of putting yourself in
yeah.
that environment and
Mm.
making sure that you like it. That's a
Or even
great idea.
renting there. The other thing too, if you've never owned a house, you might want to go rent something for 6 months in the area. If you know you're going to have to
Mhm.
rent for another year, why not go rent in the area that you want to buy in, and then when you're ready to invest, you really know that area, know where you want to live. And as much research as you can do, the better,
Mhm.
for sure.
Absolutely. Next, finding a good real estate agent. This cannot be underscored enough how having a real estate professional on your side who does this day in and day out
Mhm.
can really be a money and a lifesaver.
Mhm. And finding somebody that you really connect with, that listens to you, that is answering you, not talking to you, but like actually answering your questions,
And
um,
actually returning your phone
and
call.
returning your phone
Mhm.
calls. Yeah, and then also, um, you know, it's easy to get caught up in "I want my friend" thing, but you really probably want more of a guide
Mhm.
than a friend. I mean, I think that's. I mean, we can be both, but I think in the long run, it's you want someone who's really going to professionally take care of you and make sure have your best interest at heart. So,
It's
um,
one of the biggest purchases you're
yeah,
ever going to make
yeah,
unless you buy business or something. So it's super important that you find the right person that gels with your personality, that is always going to be the calmest person in the room, is very knowledgeable
um,
about the area, about real estate in general in the market.
and visiting open houses, not for neighborhoods but for agents, is a great way to shop for an agent. I mean, that's a really great way. Recommendations are great. I mean, people telling you, yeah, this guy worked for me, or this girl was a woman. Sorry, woman
Nah,
worked for
girls,
me. But
ladies.
I mean, I think it's really important that you either connect with them and you find somebody, or you have a good recommendation. But
Yes.
take that seriously, because it's really. And you know what? Especially as a buyer, you really need an agent. I mean, you really do. It's a lot to navigate,
Mhm.
and you need an advocate.
And even just things like, the seller has to fill out disclosures, how to read those disclosures so you understand what's working, what's not working,
Mhm.
the inspections. I mean, there's just so much that you have that having that professional on your side is vital.
When to accept something from the lender, and when to push back on it. I mean,
Mhm.
what does it mean whenever there's so much of it that is just, again, we talked about this earlier in another broadcast or podcast, is that you don't do this every day. We do it every day. And
Mhm.
so there's just certain things that we go A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and you don't know what any of that is, but we know this is the process we follow. So just it's an easy thing to get caught up in, and to think you can navigate it alone, and then just kind of end up really in a real bad place. So
Yes.
yeah, you want somebody who's, and you can end up in a bad place with an agent who isn't doing right. I mean, I think you really do need to find someone that you trust, and then just because you connect with them, then you should do a little due diligence and figure out, did other people trust them too?
Right.
Yeah.
And, your agent, this next one is, understand the market.
Mm.
Your agent can help you on that. They're in this every day and know what's going on. But I think, you as a buyer need to understand that even if you're doing some of your own research. Right now here in Tulsa, we just don't have a lot of inventory. People aren't putting their homes on the market and prices are staying high. Then if the interest rates go down, more people may be putting their house on the market, but also you may have more buyers and more competition. So, knowing what the market's doing as far as interest rates, is it a buyer's market? Is it a seller's market? All of those things I think can help you make a decision, because the best time to buy a house is when it's best for you. But knowing some of these other extra things can help you know the doubly best time.
And the nuances. I think there's so many nuances, in like, just because it's one school district, that could be, school districts are huge.
Mhm.
And so there's different parts of the school district that are going to have completely different things,
Mhm.
and if you have a big, huge school district that everybody goes to one campus for high school, that maybe doesn't mean anything when the kids are in elementary school, but suddenly in high school, that's maybe a really long way away from where you're talking about buying, and you want something that is easier to get and drop off and come home. So, I mean, all of those things seem like they wouldn't be that big of a deal, but they are a big deal. And somebody who really knows the market and knows that area is
Mhm.
going to give you a lot of the nuanced stuff that you just don't know.
One thing we were interested in, we're in one of those mega school districts, but we knew when we had kids, we wanted them to go to a neighborhood school. Well, Union has a lot of small
Mhm.
elementary schools all through the neighborhoods. Some of the
And they have
others,
like cult-like followings.
yeah,
I
they
mean,
do.
it's
They
really
do.
interesting. Yeah.
But some of the other school districts, maybe you want only 3 or 4 elementary schools, one high school. I just think looking at that, asking questions about the market and the neighborhoods with your agent, that's important too.
Absolutely, and it's also interesting because there's so many differences. Like if you go to a big school compared to a small, like smaller country school, you know, there's a lot of advantages to the big school, but then also if your kid isn't the star athlete, they may not play that much, or
Mhm,
they may not, they aren't the best singer, they may not sing that much. Where some of the smaller schools, they may get to play more and do more of athletics or performing arts. I mean, so all those things,
mhm.
you don't think about them necessarily when you're looking, but it's like those are things that a good agent's going to say, "Hey, here's something to think about." I don't know
Here's the
which is better
resale
for
on
you.
that area.
Yeah, yeah. And
Mhm,
if you've got a kid who's, just a superstar when it comes to athletics, then yeah, you may really want them to be in, one of the mega schools. But if you have a kid who really likes to play sports, but they aren't that good, then you might want to go to a smaller school where they get to like have fun and do that. So
mhm.
it's one of those things you really you need to think about all that. It's really important.
Absolutely. All right. So now you've found the house, you've searched with your agent, you've done all this research, you've gotten your finances in order. Now you put in your offer. What comes next? Well, now it's time.
I was crossing my fingers.
Yeah. So, hope is not a strategy. We
Oh,
really do need a strategy, and inspect and insure. Those are the next things on your
mhm,
list when you're buying a house.
sure.
And a little bit with inspections here in Oklahoma. Generally, how I write my contracts, we make the offer, it's accepted. 3 days later, we start inspections.
Mm.
We have 10 business days to do all of those
Well, we write
inspections.
in 10 business days. The contract says it
10
defaults to
days.
10 days, but Cindy and I both put in business
Yeah,
days.
just to give you that
Uh-huh.
extra
You don't
time.
necessarily want to take that time. You really want to get them done as quickly as possible so that then you can give the seller more time to get the investigations they need to do on the repairs and the bids in. But it gives you the time to really get, like, if you run into one issue that you need to go into further
Mhm.
investigation. So,
Or
since,
during COVID, where
yeah,
everybody was booked and it was
right,
almost impossible to
right.
get in
I
line.
just think sometimes people look at that and they think, "Oh, that means I'm going to take all the time I can until the end," and that's really not what you're trying to accomplish. But you're trying to ensure that you have enough time to get that done.
So you
So,
have those 10 business days. If you find anything wrong with the house that you've decided this is not it, you can cancel the contract during that time and get your earnest money back. Then you have the following 7 days where you have given them something called a TRR. The buyers are giving the sellers a TRR, treatment, repair, and replace. And these are the things that if you have decided to ask them to repair
Either
things,
treat, repair, or replace. Yeah.
yes, this is going to be on that document.
Mhm.
You give it to them. The homeowner then has 7 days to get all the bids in on those things and decide. All those things are a negotiation.
Yeah, and I think it's really important that you realize that there is no such thing as a perfect house. And the
Yes.
inspection is not trying to make a house into a perfect house or try to tell you that it's going to be a perfect house. And the investigation, the inspection is limited in what it can do. There are different things you can get inspected. So it's important to really go through that with I always send people to the inspection companies, let them go through all the range of inspections that they provide and let the buyer decide which one they want to pay for because each one is a little bit more money, but each one has its own, value. But it's, electrical, mechanical, plumbing is kind of a standard. Then you can add on a structural. You can add on
Pool,
pool.
termites.
Yeah, I mean, so there's lots of different variation, but the kind of the very basic package is electrical, uh, plumbing,
And HVAC.
mechanical, yeah,
Yeah, mechanical.
mechanical.
Yes.
So it's really those are that's like your basic, but like some of them you add on for windows, the looking at the windows, doing things. There's all different things, so you have to really know what it is. But you have to get that list back and not go, oh my gosh, want them to do every single thing because
Yeah.
there's
Please
going to be
don't do that.
things. There are going to be things that are like required that need to be immediately addressed. There'll be things that probably should be addressed soon, and there's going to be things that aren't that big of a deal. You maybe just want to kind of watch and monitor them. So if you put every single thing, and
Mm-hmm. Yes, we're waiting.
my pet peeve is whenever another realtor just sends me a TRR and says repair everything that's on the on
Oh yeah,
the
no.
on because
Oop.
there's a lot of stuff that's mentioned, but it's mentioned more as an observation. So you really need someone to list out exactly what it is you are asking in you know cite the it's all done in cite like one section one issue A. I mean, I do it that, and then I explain a little bit about it. So it's really important that you have someone who goes into it for that kind of detail because there's a lot of stuff that you could kind of misinterpret.
And if you go as a buyer and you give a 3-page TRR, which I've gotten
Hmm. And
before
there's
when I
sometimes a house deserves a
Sure,
three-page
sure.
too.
Well, this
Yeah,
this house did not.
yeah.
We ended up
So that's your pet peeve.
yeah,
Yeah,
we
yeah.
ended up, getting the deal closed, but, that's how Todd and I got our house that we live in now. We put in a backup offer on a house that was already under contract. We were just there in case the deal fell through, and the buyers kept nickel and diming the sellers,
Mhm.
and finally they just said, "We're avoiding the contract. We're gonna go with a backup offer because this has just gotten out of control."
And I mean, people get to the place where they go, "Wow, these people have very unrealistic
Mhm.
expectations, and I don't want to do this." And people a lot of times their bottom line is already on that. They're kind of it's not like everyone's just making a fortune selling their house,
Mhm.
and so sometimes that money is really tight for them, and they can't just do everything that somebody wants. And I think it's like you get into different levels of it. The where sometimes the buyer doesn't have any money to do the repairs after they get in the house,
Mhm.
and the seller doesn't have the money to do the repairs now. So you may not be able to come to a conclusion, or you may have to really, really navigate that and get where everybody is comfortable with what level they are. So I just think there's kind of a thing with the public where sometimes they think the inspection is something that you hand them a list, and then everything on there is something that has to be addressed immediately.
And it used to be you would say, like, "We'll do repairs up to $2,500 or $2,000," whatever.
Yeah.
It doesn't work like that in
And the
Oklahoma
problem with
anymore.
that was that we all hated it because it made the seller think that was their cap, that they did that was the most they had to pay, and it made the buyer think that they deserved every penny of that.
Yes.
So that's kind of why it went away is because you had two unhappy parties because of that. But then by making it go away, then it's kind of like there's no expectation of where this buyer is going to come in and what they're going to expect. So Yeah, so we still don't have that perfected, I don't think,
Yeah,
but
I don't think so
it's been. I
either.
don't know that you can ever perfect that though. I mean, I think it's going to be difficult.
Well, and let's talk about as is because
Hmm.
we saw a lot of homes being sold. It used to be, ooh, don't go to that house. It's as is. Something's majorly
Yeah,
wrong. But during COVID, sellers were like, well, I don't want to repair anything.
yeah.
I think kind of houses are really sold as is because it's on the buyer's due diligence to do these inspections and
Buyer
ask
beware.
ask for repairs.
Yeah, I mean, I think that as is kind of a misnomer because I think people think it's a blanket to say that no matter what, you're buying this house now, and we have the right. You have the right to inspection. You have an inspection period, even if it's as is. So if you find something really monumentally bad about the house, like let's say it's built over a sinkhole, that's a problem, and you should be able to get out because you didn't know that it was not a material fact that was known to you when you bought it. I will say the biggest problem we had though is one reason why inspections are so important now is because a lot of people didn't do inspections or they did inspections and then they didn't do the repairs. And now it's 2, 3 years later. And so we have these houses because, it's annoying
Mhm,
to a lot of people as our sellers whenever the TRR and the inspections, but that's actually an industry thing that keeps houses really maintained.
mhm.
It's actually whenever people say, "Oh, it's the original owner," everyone gets excited about that, like that's some great thing. I actually don't like that. I would prefer that it's been a few times transferred because there's usually been some evaluation and some repairs done in that period. But, like I don't have inspections. I've been in my house a long time and I don't have inspections all the time. So I don't know. There could be things, that come up. So, but yeah, I think it's a good tool when you really come in
Mhm.
low and you're saying, we're going to come in low. We know we're coming in low. We respect that. The seller probably doesn't want to spend a lot of money on repairs. We're willing to do with some things, but we are going to have inspections.
Absolutely have
Yeah.
inspections.
So that's a
Yes.
good tool sometimes because, and I think it's, also the other thing that kind of is an interesting thing is that you ask the seller to have repairs done. They're trying to do those repairs as inexpensively as possible. And so there's some repairs I don't really want them done the least expensive. I want them
Mhm.
done the best. So sometimes
Electrical.
I will ask for a credit and I'll do that myself and
Mhm.
maybe I'll spend more to get a better job because the seller's responsibility is to get it up to working order, but I would like it to be a little bit more than working order, and it's stupid to spend the money twice. So
Well, and I have a deal right now with a first time home buyer, and the home was basically, as is. We of course did our inspections. Well, it come to find out the roof is a complete and total loss.
oh,
And there's a
which
lot of
is not
ways
unusual.
and not
Yeah.
unusual. I mean, it's probably going to have,
Oklahoma is awful on roofs.
yep,
Awful.
probably going to have leaks. I mean, nobody could insure it. And actually, the seller came forward and said, we will go ahead and redo the roof with their insurance and pay their deductible because they knew even if this deal busted, they were going to have to
Mm,
fix this roof on the next thing.
yeah.
So take as is, meaning they really don't want to repair anything, but negotiations can be done to make sure on something
And if
that
you have a
big.
lender, there's no such thing as is because the
Mhm.
lender is going to have, the appraisal could have requirements. So I mean, like you just it there's a lot to that. People use that. They throw that around sometimes and it's not used correctly. But I just think anytime you see as is, sometimes I tell people, it's good. At least they're saying they're not going to be nitpicking.
Mhm.
And you can go back and say, well, we accept this on as is when they ask for repairs. But if, like you said, if they come back and say the roof is shot, it's an expectation that a roof is in working order.
Yeah,
It's an
absolutely.
expectation that the electrical system is in working order.
Right. So we mentioned inspections. As you can tell, we think that is a really big deal
Mhm.
for buyers. But with inspections and insure this home, you're going to have to get insurance. One thing that I think that is important to talk about are the um, home warranties that
Mm.
you can ask in your contract for the seller to provide, and it can be a home warranty on foundation, electrical. You can even include the pool. Basically, how these work, the seller would pay for it during closing. And then over the next year, if you have an issue that comes up, your fridge quits and it's under warranty, then you call the warranty company, you pay a flat fee, $100 or whatever. They bring a company out to take care of that, fix it, repair it, whatever it needs. I'm a big believer in these for older houses. I know it doesn't always work correctly, and I can see the look on your face right now. But sometimes, if you don't have a lot of money for repairs,
Yeah.
that home warranty may keep you from having to spend 10,000 on, a new air conditioner.
Well, it's strange because it's kind of insurance, but they're not allowed to call it insurance.
It's a warranty.
It's a warranty, and then I think that I mean, I've had some really great experiences with warranties, and I've had some
Mhm.
really not great experiences with warranties. I will say that it's a very inexpensive. It seems expensive, but it's a fairly inexpensive for what you potentially can get out of it.
Mhm.
And I've known people who've gotten whole. In fact, I've gotten a lot of things for my own house through the beginning. But a hot water tank costs a lot of money. HVAC costs a lot of money.
Mhm.
So that part of it's good. I think it's like if you expect it to be that you're not going to have any more repairs, that's a misnomer because
Right.
they will, they usually send somebody out and kind of their job is to figure out how to make it work the best that they can to not replace it.
Right.
I mean, they're not looking, when a workman comes to your house, they're kind of looking for work. So
Mhm.
they're like, you probably need to replace it is kind of their standard, right?
Sure.
But when it's a warranty, they're like coming in going,
I can
you
replace
probably
it.
don't need to replace it. We can probably stub it along, and they will for a long time. But if it's like a system just fails, which is what's happened to my house, a couple of times, we knew that we had the warranty and we paid it, and then those systems failed, and it was like, okay. I mean, I came home and it was the first time the heat came on. We came home from dinner, and our whole house had smoke in the house. Yeah, and it was like, "Turn the heater off, call the warranty company," and
ASAP.
we ended up getting like, what they were gonna pay for was one thing, and then we ended up upgrading to what we wanted, but at least it was
It helps.
substantial. So, yeah, I think for kind of catastrophic insurance kind of a thing,
Mhm.
I think it's a good thing. I just think that people have a tendency to think I think it's sold to people a lot of times like it's gonna, you're just call them and then everything will be fixed. And it's
And
kind
if
of
and if you have a leak, let's say in your shower, a lot of times they'll send a plumber out to fix the leak, but you have to put the tiles, have to have
which
somebody come
yeah,
in and
yeah.
redo the tiles that were torn up.
And
So
and that's
it doesn't
fair.
pay for everything.
And it doesn't cover anything your insurance covers. So,
Yes. And so speaking of that, that's the other part of this inspect and insure. Be sure that you talk with your insurance agent. Let them know what you're doing. Let them know where the house is, the age of the roof, those kinds of things that are going to be super important.
and the other thing too, even with insurance, that kind of off subject but kind of on subject, if you don't want to just use your insurance company every time something is a little bit off because
They
when
will
you
cancel you.
well, even beyond that, even if they don't cancel you, whenever someone goes to buy your house, those claims will have them show up, and the claims follow that house, and so it makes it difficult for people to get insurance that are buying your house. I've had deals fall because people are like,
Interesting.
the insurance company's like, no, they've had all kinds of claims on that house, we're not covering it. So yeah, I mean,
Hmm.
insurance is getting a lot more picky. So
All right, so next on our list is plan for additional costs. The
oh,
what you're paying monthly for your mortgage is not going to be the only thing you are going to pay as a homeowner. I can promise you.
you are your landlord. You
Mhm.
are your landlord. So
Could you say that one more time?
you are your landlord.
There you go.
Uh, Pay the rent. I can't pay the rent. So, sorry, but so no. Whenever you like think about it, when you had your apartment or your house and your dishwasher didn't work, and you called the landlord at 10:30 in anger that that dishwasher was not working, and you wanted it fixed immediately. Well, if that dishwasher goes out and at 10:30 you've got a bunch of dirty dishes in your dishwasher, it is you who will be figuring out how to get it fixed. So
Mhm.
you have to have that emergency fund. You have to have back to kind of the credit card thing. If you don't have a good emergency fund or you have a decent, you really should have a good credit card, where you can put some balances if you need it for an emergency because stuff happens.
And
It's
and
not when, it's if things
mhm.
happen.
And home maintenance. The paint on the outside of your house is only going to last so long in
Mhm.
Oklahoma.
Yeah, absolutely. And a roof. I mean, your roof eventually will not be if you don't have a storm that takes it out and insurance covers it, you have to replace your roof. And so you were talking about the insurance covering. I have one now where the people are having to do it because it was past the age and it was time for that. So they're having to put a whole new roof on and it's awful, but that is part of home ownership. You are responsible for that.
And if you defer maintenance, I promise you, you will not get as much for your house when it's time to sell it,
Mhm.
because those things just pile
Peop
up
Well,
and
people
pile
don't
up.
wanna buy your issue,
I like that.
you
Yeah.
know? Like, that is an issue that you have to deal with because it's your house still.
Hmm.
And if they're gonna buy it, they're gonna buy it, or if they're gonna buy your issue, you're going to let them have a big discount for that issue.
Yep. That's
One
exactly
or the
right.
other. So, anytime when you see that, it's something really to remember. And the other thing too, though, is like if you haven't done a lot in years and years you've lived in your house and you got away without paying to do a lot, because I put so much money in my house all the time, it's crazy. So when it comes in, I mean, I'll make a profit on paper, but I probably have put more in it than I will get out of it, because that's just how I am. But for people who don't do a lot of stuff in their house and they defer the maintenance and they have to do some things at the end, they probably came out better, even though it hurts at the end because they weren't spending all that money, doing stuff.
As long
So
as their house doesn't fall apart before they
yeah, I
send
mean, I'm not saying
sell
that's a
it.
good plan. I just mean that it's important to remember
Yeah.
at the end, if you haven't spent any money on your house for years and years and now you're having to, you it's actually, I never understand why people will do so much to get a house ready to sell instead of enjoy it. Like I would rather do it and live in it for 2 years, and then
Hmm.
when I go to sell it, that feature is there that's attractive, instead of wait till the last minute and then make it great for somebody else. It's like, it's an interesting thing. I'm glad people do it because
Hmm.
they need it done, but it's just like there's a lot of things people should do so they get to enjoy it.
And if budgets are tight, I know there's going to be things that you have to pay for, but also, you want to make sure that you're doing stuff to your house, unless, if you want to put in a pool, great, but know that that may or may not add
It's not.
150,000 more dollars, exactly,
It's not.
150,000 more dollars to your
Yeah,
house.
it's not. It's just
But
not.
there are things that you can do that will make your house more valuable, and that's
100%.
that's a, when it's great to swing back around to your real estate agent and
Mhm.
say, hey, take a walk through my house. And
And as the buyer going through, if a pool is a really big deal to you, try to find a house that has a pool you like.
Mhm,
Don't, I mean, it's going to be, you will be money ahead to find a house with a pool you like. I mean, that's where, again, having a really good agent on your side who can say, that's something you should find, not do. Now,
mhm.
if you just can't find it and you end up having to do it and you're okay with staying long enough for that to finally, pay off, or that you're willing to take that, it's important to you, then that makes sense. But it's not important to most people, and so you're gonna, pay for it. When you customize a house, you know, anytime you customize a house, there's a potential ding for that because you're really limiting down the demographic buyer for it.
And I always think it's great to, jump on Google and, Google what are, things I can do for my house that will help increase the
Yeah, the
value.
resale value. You wanna
Hmm.
look at the percentage of resale value, and it's kind of interesting, like, I think a kitchen, you can some kitchen renovations, you can get, like, 120% return on.
Hmm.
Um, Bathrooms, I think, are, either over 100 or right around there, and then it just starts going down, but, like, pools are, like, 40%, 30%. I mean, yeah, yeah, but it's good to know those things. It's good to
Hmm.
know those things when you're looking, because then what am I going to do? What do I want to buy and find, or what am I willing to do later? And sometimes you have to do it later because you can't find it.
Sure. All right. We've got two last things on our list. Be flexible as a homeowner. I think, God always has a great sense of humor. And
Mm.
if you think your house is going to stand exactly as it is the way you bought it, Mother Nature and lots of other things can make those changes for you. So I think just for your sanity, you just need to know as a homeowner, I'm going to have to be flexible.
And
Things are
as a
going to go wrong.
buyer, be flexible about what it is. Like we talked about the wants and needs.
Mhm.
Be flexible about moving some of your needs into your, wish list when you start realizing, like, I really want to be in this school. Like, I really, really want my kids to go to this school. But in this school district, I can have 4 bedrooms with an office. I cannot have 5 bedrooms with an
Mhm.
office. So we're going to make that office a slash office guest room. So those are some flexibility things that, again, a professional can help you with. Like, here's some ways you could compromise on that, because, there are certain things like that. There's some things that are just people have to have. Like, they
Mhm.
have to have a certain school district, they have to have a certain elementary school. I mean, whatever it is. And so have the flexibility when you're looking at the house to be, more open to that.
Absolutely. And finally, stay emotionally prepared.
Good luck.
Life and home ownership,
Yeah.
it's just sometimes you just have to go, okay, I'm going to tackle this and I'm not going to
Mhm.
fall apart. And again, I think this is great when you have a real estate professional on your side helping you before, during, and after the sale, because a lot of times that's our job is to be
Yeah.
the party that's not in a puddle of tears on the
Yeah.
floor.
But when John and I went to look for, when we bought the house we're in now, it was so funny because after about 3 weeks of doing it, I just looked at him. I said, "You are the worst client we have ever had, ever." And he started laughing. He goes, "I know, I can't help it." I mean, it's so emotional when
Mhm.
you're doing, even if it's your job. I mean, it's like, but it's also kind of like it makes you a better realtor when you go through that. Just like a friend of mine was a knee surgeon. He's retired now, but and he was talking about he had to have knee surgery, and it was the best thing that ever happened to him for his business because it made him realize how actually painful the
Yeah.
recovery was. And
Mhm.
so I think, when we go through that, we kind of realize that I'll never forget. I mean, he would just start talking and trying to do stuff. I'd be like, "What are you doing? We don't do this. We know better than
Oh,
this."
that's great. All right, so let's go through our list again. We have getting your budget and finances in order, getting pre-approved for your mortgage. Doesn't mean you have to buy that expensive of a house, but at least
Mhm.
you know what you can afford. Your wish list versus your wants list. Research neighborhoods, hire a great agent, understand the market, inspect and insure your home, plan for additional costs, be flexible, and stay emotionally prepared.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think that emotional one goes through every single one of those because you know
Mhm.
what? It's emotional even to look at your credit cards and realize
Oh,
what you've done to yourself sometimes. Like cut yourself a break. This is not a judgment. We're not judging your past. You can't judge your past. You just got to be living in your present and live in your future and figure it out because, that's it's very I think a lot of times we hold ourselves back from actually going forward and buying the house or doing the thing because we just don't want to face that part of it. So
mhm,
that's why that's number one.
mhm.
And so the number one thing is even if you do it in small parts, even if you just take one credit card and deal with it, and then take the next one, whatever you can do to get started, just do it. And that's even if you don't plan to buy a house for 5 years,
Yeah.
this is the time to start really getting your house in order because if you ever do want to be a homeowner, it needs to be in order.
So we've talked today about getting your house in order to be a buyer. Next week, we're going to talk about getting literally your house in order
Ah,
to sell.
yeah, and that's a big one.
Mhm,
That's a really even down to staging. People think staging
mhm.
is one thing. Decorating is a completely different thing than staging. So
Absolutely.
we're going to explore all those different things, and then also back to getting a good agent on your side. Talking to somebody before you start getting your house ready is really smart too because you can make a lot of silly mistakes like we were talking about with the pool or with the
Mhm.
thinking that's going to get you a lot more money and it can actually cost you more money than it gets you. So we'll go through all that stuff.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you
Thank
so much
you.
for joining us again. Everybody, get real out there. Thank
Get
you.
real.
All right.
Bye. Thank you.